Titan? Titane? Titane.
Titane.
Titane is one of those films you have to watch more than once in order to fully understand what the director Julia Cornrow
Julia Ducogno
is trying to say. The only problem is that it's as hard to watch as it is to pronounce. Let's watch and try to discover what's being said underneath all of the gore, body horror, pain, killing, needles, blood, explosions, and great music. Let's talk Titane. The film starts with a little girl annoying her father in the car. The father turns the radio up to not hear her incessant vrooming. The music continues to get louder until she undoes her seatbelt and tries to stand up. The father reaches back and the car goes screeching right into a concrete block. The little girl gets a titanium headplate to patch her skull and is let out of the hospital. The nurse asks the parents to look out for any neurological damage, and literally as soon as she is released, she hugs and kisses the car, feeling it up and down. Parents are like, "Checks out for me, man. Whew, I thought she might be weird." But anyway, we're off in the disgusting world of Titane. I bring up the intro in so much detail, as it really is the basis for the whole film, as most intros are. The film has a lot to do with childhood trauma in many shapes and forms, and we'll be continuing to touch on this topic throughout the rest of the video, so strap in, it's gonna be a doozy. Cut to a while in the future. Titanium Girl is a stripper at a car show. Did not know those existed. Ever since the accident, she has really liked cars. It feels like she sees them as her protector, and now that she has a metal plate in the side of her skull, she can really emulate the feeling of being metallic. She relates to them in a very strange and unique way, similar to how I relate with Mandingo. She has a sort of sympathy for cars. So spoilers from here on out, this movie is batshit crazy, and it turns batshit about 3 seconds into it, so just gonna get that out there. Now, this might come as a surprise, but you can't actually have sex with a car. Trust me, I have tried. But she does, so it obviously is a metaphor for something else. I personally believe that it represents the effect of a specific childhood trauma, such as a car crash, a sexual assault, or anything just as horrific on a developing brain. The brain might internalize feelings that happened on that day as something else, and in turn it will associate things that have to do with the trauma and gravitate towards them. Now, I am no doctor or psychoanalysis person, it's just what I'm reading from the film. I'm a business student, so I don't know much. For Alexia, this trauma turns into having sex with cars. I mean, whatever floats your boat, I guess. As it turns out, the parents were wrong. The accident did indeed force some neurological damage, as she is not only a car sexer, but a serial killer as well, who, if you didn't know, are very much known for their silly antics. We are shown this in the scene after her strip show, in which she is followed to her car by an energetic fan. This is the first of many sexual assault implications in this film. She kills him by stabbing him through the ear with her hair thing, which itself probably represents something that I am not aware of. Perhaps a token of her more feminine attributes that also gets lost after her transformation later on in the film. But who knows? This leads to the car sex scene. Not a sex scene in a car, no. The car sex scene, like it's hopping up and down and stuff. There is definitely a Pixar Cars joke in here somewhere. I'm not gonna make it. Anyways, she gets pregnant from this incident, as one does. I mean, it wasn't even wearing a muffler. It's hard not to think of a metaphor for sexual assault during this part of the film. She kills the man about to assault her and then immediately gets preggo from the same type of machine that protected her when she was younger, specifically during a traumatic moment of her life. I don't know, but what I think it's implying is a little too much for YouTube, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Next, please be seated for the at-home abortion scene. Somehow it's more painful to watch than you would think. Again, this leads back to the rape allegory in the scene prior. She now has an unwanted baby and must use a crazy at-home method that is extremely dangerous. Literally, just show this one scene to the Supreme Court and they'd be like, hey, yo, that shit's illegal now, dog. Absolutely not. The old chopstick up the you-know-what technique doesn't work, so the baby is still coming. During this time, we also hear mention of a boy who is still missing years after his disappearance. This will become very important shortly. The baby leads her to killing a shit ton of people in disgusting fashion, including her friend, a bunch of swingers, this nice man, and her parents, for no real discernible reason. She just kinda does it. If there's one thing in this film that I'm actively confused about, it's the fact that she just like nonchalantly kills everyone close to her. Now I admit they weren't exactly sitcom family close, but still, didn't even give it a second thought. This also brings in the first time of showing fire. Fire plays a huge role in this film, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Alexia is now on the run, being hunted for all of the killings that we just witnessed. She goes to the airport, but there's a bunch of security guards, so instead of going to jail for the rest of her life, she pretends to be a grown-up version of the kid who has been missing. This insane plan works because she disfigures her face in another absolutely horrible scene to watch. The father of the missing child is brought in order to confirm that it really is his missing son. He says "Yeppers," all checks out and takes her in, thinking it's his long-lost boy. The man is a firefighter, a first responder who lives on a base with other first responders. He brings his son back with him in order to possibly have him join the team and also get reacquainted. The man is like super messed up in the head. He lost his son many years ago and never really recovered. Instead, it's hinted at later in the film that he actually knows for a fact that his son is dead, and he's just pretending to go along with her to try to receive some closure on his guilt, as well as create a fake world wherein which his son is somehow still alive and has returned to him. He is majorly suffering from trauma, as well as which happened to a child. However, they are dealing with said trauma in two different ways. He is shooting up a shit ton of steroids, while she just straight up kills people. Both are not great ways to cope, but you know, it's all they got really. So now we have two different perspectives on childhood trauma. We have the child, which is Alexia, and the man who would be the parent. They give each other something that no one else could give them. Alexia gets compassion from a father figure, while the father gets the second chance he's been dreaming of the last few years. In a strange but purposeful way, they complete each other. This is the beauty of this film, and why it works so well. The relationship between these two messed up characters is one of the most unique and interesting relationships explored in film, ever. It's right behind Mr. Magoo and his walking stick. A young man who is a firefighter working under the father begins to expect his son of being the runaway serial killer. He tries to bring up the information to the man, but gets cut off, never being told to speak of his son again. This all culminates during a fire scene where the man gives the younger man a propane tank to hold in the middle of a forest fire. He blows up. Like father, like son, huh? Killing folks with fire. Fire plays a huge role in this film, like I said. She kills her parents with fire. She ends up literally at a fire station, putting out fires as a job. Fire represents the chaotic turning points in the two characters' lives. She decides to get away, so she sets a fire. He decides to fully give in to the idea that in some way or another that she is his son. So he blows up the one person that would really try to put a stop to it. Fire can also be seen as cleansing, and from their own perspectives, I'm sure that's what they are feeling. Also, later in the film, when the older man is kind of depressed, he lights himself on fire, almost to try to pure himself from these other sins committed along the path of being with his son. In the end, he sees it's not really his son, but being so grateful for the chance to think he's alive again, he doesn't even mind. The film ends with her giving birth to a half-human, half-car baby with a metal spine and the dad having a new son. With better attachments, comes with turn signals. So that's the film. It's pretty insane. I'm just gonna go over some other things that I noted while watching it. I believe the man knew all along that this woman was not his son. He is just pretending in order to try to go mentally back to the times when he was alive. I think this is confirmed when in the fire the man sees a charred body of a little kid in a drawer. This is literally never mentioned or showed again, and I absolutely believe that that was his son. He knows his son is no longer alive, but still goes along with his fantasy, not only for his own mind, but also to help this person who is pretending to be his son, because no matter what, he sees some of him in her. The emotion of this film is really nailed towards the end when he says, "Whoever you are my son." It speaks to his unwillingness to let the past go, until that point, and him finally coming to the terms with the fact that his son is dead, but he will always be able to live through him. This leads perfectly into the ending, where all of a sudden he gets a new kid to look after. On another note, I think this film should be looked at by professional therapists, because a lot of the details in it seem very much psychological, specifically dealing with trauma. It shows trauma in a more realistic way, where instead of just having a trauma impact her at one point at the beginning, it instead goes on to show you that it is more of a wave that keeps rippling through the person over time, rather than just the one-time incident. That's why the first scene is so important. Through that one random day, that one random accident, this entire film happens. Without her standing up on that one day, she may have never killed anyone. One single point of trauma that led her to becoming a serial killer, which led her to breaking her face, pretending to be this dude's son, which led her to giving birth to a baby that the same man has to raise. trauma at a young age is the main reason that this story was ever put into motion, and I guarantee it was one of the main influences on the director. Now, one last thing. There is also a statement on gender identity. Now, this is definitely one that I know very, very little about and will not try to tackle anytime soon. But just a few details that I wanted to point out. It features very prominently a girl pretending to be a guy in order to fit in with surroundings, until the girl underneath of the disguise breaks out. Also, the man really wants to see the masculinity in his son, even going as far to shave her face for her. His kind of masculine presence, as well as her disguise as a man, ends up having some physical effects on her as well, as she ends up growing a little stubble in her mustache on the last scene. So clearly, something is there. I don't know exactly what it's trying to say. I would need to take a few college classes, I think, but still. There's a few other details that I noted. There's also at the beginning of the movie, there's a song that plays, and it's sung by a gruff-sounding older man. And then during the dance scene towards the end, it's the same song, but it's a young woman singing at this time. Definitely saying something. I don't know what, but it's very cool and it's very purposeful. Anyways, it's super good. This is one of the most deep and thought-provoking movies I've ever seen. I think it holds up incredibly well, and I think everyone should watch it. I've watched it two times now. Probably watch it a third time. The problem is you can't show it to anyone because it's so messed up. But it is super, super good, super well done. Please go watch it. It's a 10 out of 10. Thank you for listening, and as always, please hit a like button, subscribe, do whatever you gotta do. I just wanted to share my thoughts on this, some of my analysis on this film. I really love the director. She directed Raw as well, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I could talk about that movie for another 15 minutes if I wanted to, but I'll leave this here. So thank you again for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'll be back soon.